All right, good evening and welcome to the Hanson Select Board meeting of Tuesday, January 28th, 2025. This meeting is being recorded by Whitman Hanson Community Access Television. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. As per usual, we have a jam-packed agenda. And unfortunately, our esteemed colleague, Mr. Heel, is out ill this evening, so I'm going to put on my tap shoes and read the announcements. We are looking for citizens at large to become members of the following committees: Bylaw Committee, Cable and Internet Committee, Camp Kiwanee Commission, Capital Improvement Committee, Economic Development Committee, Energy Committee, Historical Commission, Memorial Day and Patriotic Observance Committee, and Recreation Committee. Volunteer applications may be found on the town website or by calling the Select Board's office at 781-293-2131. We also have, this is not in the announcements, but I'm just going to go off script here. We also have several elected positions, which you can find on the town clerk's website. We have a planning board opening, 2 library board trustees, 1 select board position, a water commissioner position, and I know I'm missing something. School committee. Thank you, whoever said that. The papers need to be turned in by March, but they are available with the town clerk right now. And if you have thoughts on how things could be improved, then I would encourage you to pull papers and be part of the process. Pembroke Historical Society presents Pembroke Resolves Wednesday, February 5th, 2025, at 1 p.m. for Pembroke and Hanson residents. Hanson was a part of Pembroke until 1820. I think you went to this with me last year. Ed did, I think.
Oh, Ed did.
Yeah, it was great, and I think you've been to this before too, Representative Sweezy. It is a reading of the resolution, the Pembroke Resolves resolution. It's a kind of a reenactment of a historical event. And I love the fact that Pembroke wants to partner with us on that. And so would encourage anybody who happens to be kicking around at 1 p.m. on February 5th, which is a Wednesday, to join them. I believe it's at the Senior Center, although the announcement does not say that. The Economic Development Committee is hosting Hanson's first business summit on February 27th, 2025 at 5:30 p.m. at Camp Kiwanee. There is a raffle entrance for the first 25 businesses at RSVP, which is preferred but not required. Please bring plenty of business cards for networking. There will be special guest speakers, networking opportunities, breakout sessions on current hot topics, town officials available for your business questions, light refreshments will be served, and we may or may not have folks from our state government, including Representative Sweezy, coming. So RSVP, and for any questions, please call our office, the planning board office, 781-293-9035, or email the Economic Development Committee at edc@hanson-ma.gov. We have several businesses that are going to be speaking at that, one of whom is Webster Printing, which I'm really excited about. And it's just going to be a good opportunity to have businesses get to know each other, talk to the town about what we can do to help them grow, what impediments we have that might be preventing them from growing, give us some feedback, and just kind of a good networking session. So be there or be square. Upcoming meetings, our next meeting.
One.
Yeah, I was just going to say, our next meeting is February 11th, 2025, and then February 25th, 2025, and March 11th, 2025. So with that, I will ask for a moment of silence for Patricia Concrete. You may know Patricia Concrete as the Blueberry Farm lady. And for years, they've had that wonderful farm in town. and she's been a beacon of light in town and a wonderfully active. She passed away suddenly and peacefully on January 2nd after a lengthy illness. She was the loving wife of Jack Concrete. For over 38 years, they owned and operated the Blueberry Farm in Hanson. Pat was born and raised in Newport, Rhode Island. She graduated from Rogers High School, class of 65, and the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, class of 69. She worked for over 25 years as an administrative dietitian at Mass General Hospital. After retiring, she worked at All American Assisted Living in Hanson. She was a former member of the Capital Improvement Committee and an active election worker. Pat was part of a large and loving family of friends who brightened her days and who will miss her very much. Special thanks go out to all of them. To honor Pat's wishes, there will be no funeral service. The celebration of life will be held in the spring. Please join me in a moment of silence for Patricia Concrete. Okay, thank you. We're going to kick it off with a legislative update from our newly elected state representative, Ken Sweezy. Ken, we're thrilled to have you here. Thank you so much for keeping us in the loop. And I also want to thank you and Senator Brady for your very timely support on our little fire drill, pardon the pun, that we had, was it last week? It seems like it was, yeah, it was last week, where we had been told that we were going to lose a firefighter grant. That Chief O'Brien had already been told we were going to be awarded in November. And then suddenly we were told that because we were not MBTA compliant, we were going to lose the grant. I called Senator Brady and I called State Representative Sweezy, and after a therapeutic session with both of them in which I expressed my very strong views that that was probably one of the lowest things I've seen in many, many years to go after a fire grant for children and seniors. Within, I want to say 4 or 5 hours, was told that the state had changed their mind and we were going to get that money along with the other towns that had been impacted. So I want to thank you for your right out of the gate partnership. I didn't expect anything different having worked with you on the Economic Development Committee, but I did want to thank you. So with that, we'll turn it over to you for some legislative updates.
Great. Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair and the board. I'm sure everyone can hear me with this thing. Yeah, we're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about MBTA communities, as that is on everybody's mind.
Yes.
In Hanson and across the district as well. Just a little intro for those that may or may not know. So recently elected back in November, sworn in on the 1st. So it's been a very busy but productive 28 days. And we'll just kind of go through what we've been working on and how we can continue to partner and sort of, take questions or whatever you guys may want to do as far as how we can work together going forward. So I put together just a few slides just to go over a couple things, some general stuff, as well as MBTA zoning, as I mentioned, and just what I've filed for legislation that's going to pertain most specifically to Hanson as we go forward. So Lisa, thank you for helping out here. As the master of the slides. So just as a quick overview for those that don't know, this is a 2-year term. And all of your state legislators, House and Senate, have to get all of their bills filed for their 2-year term in the first 2 weeks that they're sworn into office. So a freshman legislator I had from January 1st until it was actually 16 days this year, the third Friday in January, to get all my bills done, which for me was 26 bills. So we were very busy. But as you can see, there was a lot of bills, nearly 7,000 bills filed between the House and Senate. So 200 members, 7,000 bills.
That is a mystifying deadline,
Yes,
and
it is.
would seem to not be very logical,
Right.
that you would expect especially new members to do that. Any thought to filing a bill to changing that?
I'm open to filing anything that the board deems fit, I think, to make the process better. There's a lot of deadlines that we'll go through with specific issues as well as generally that are quite arbitrary. How session works, when bills come out of committees. Really all of the deadlines are quite arbitrary. They haven't announced whether, so every 2 years they do look at the rules package, as it's called, for how they're going to deal with the session. I've been told that they're looking at changing a few things to make it more transparent. So some of that stuff may be changing, deadlines, dates, filing, when bills move, and things like that. So
That particular rule is really like it puts new members at a very serious disadvantage. I mean, essentially, you've got to be doing the job before you're really doing the job.
yeah.
So, you know, you know, if you don't have the right support system, or you don't know how it works, it effectively cuts the legs out from underneath you.
Yeah.
I know that wasn't the case with you, but I just, you know, anyway.
Yeah. Hopefully Hanson won't have any new legislators for quite a long time. So hopefully we won't have to.
That 2-year term is a bugger too, and I'm all for term limits, but 2 years is like
Yeah.
you barely,
Yeah,
you know.
it's quick. It is quick. So that's just a little frame of reference there as well. So committee assignments should actually be coming up in just the next couple weeks, which I will share that information publicly and with the board to see how, you know, I can partner with you guys as well, depending on the committee there. The budget was just filed by the governor, so that's the first version. It's a big, long, complicated process that will not get really situated until the very end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th. So the House will start working on the budget April 28th. I'll basically be locked in the State House and working on that, and we'll have plenty more conversations before then to see how we can work and make sure that everything, the resources needed are coming back to Hanson. So, but that's just a little view of the process and sort of where we've been so far. But I know, like I said, that the biggest interest right now is MBTA, so I wanted to make sure that we spent the bulk of the
And
time.
Chapter 70 money.
Yes, and I'll touch on that a little bit as well. So if you want to jump to the next slide, we can just talk a little bit about what's coming up on, everyone's kind of familiar with MBTA zoning and where we are. Anyone who's watching this meeting at home, I'm sure, has been to town meeting or familiar with how the votes have gone and how Hanson, as of December 31st, was non-compliant. I'm sure you were also aware of the court case that was going on against Milton, where that was just decided 2 weeks ago, which kind of put us in a different position, which is to what you were alluding to about the fire grants and why that's come under scrutiny. So after the 8th, the Supreme Court decision that basically said the Attorney General can enforce the law. The law is constitutional, but they basically skirted the proper legal process to create the actual guidelines themselves.
Right.
The following week, the governor's office and the executive office of Housing and Livable Communities issued emergency regulations for the time being, which is where we get our new deadlines from. So as of right now, every community is back into interim compliance, which ultimately I believe was why we were awarded the fire safety equipment grant. The next deadline now is going to be February 13th, which basically states that all towns, which Hanson and all towns did do a couple years ago now, was create an action plan to come into compliance. This is not a zone. It's very important to know that an action plan is basically just a piece of paper we're signing saying that we'll look at creating a zone.
Yep.
So that's going to be our next deadline. If the town does not submit an action plan, we would then again fall out of compliance with the law. If a town does submit the action plan, the next deadline basically to start that whole process over that we went through or any town went through to create a zone, bring it to town meeting, get it approved, that deadline moved from December 31st to July 14th. And then at that point, if no zone is created, then that town, if they filed an action plan, would then be out of compliance.
Yep.
The other big dates and times I want to turn everyone's attention to, which there's going to be plenty of calls to action during this presentation as well for everybody, is what you see in the 4th bullet point here. Basically, a big part of why the SJC, Supreme Judicial Court, threw it out was because part of that process is a comment period that was never honored by the governor's office. So there is going to be a state mandated comment period, which our office will have plenty of information about, and I strongly encourage the board itself to participate in this comment period as well as the public, anyone here at home. And again, we will have plenty of information on this coming out of our office to help coordinate. But from January 31st to February 21st, so we will have exactly 3 weeks to have this open comment period to let the executive office know what we think about their regulations.
And I wanted, if you don't mind, I really It's great. People are spouting off on Facebook and
Yep.
people are spouting off wherever. This is where the rubber meets the road. If
Yep.
you really want to effectuate a change, then you need to participate in the public comment period so that the state is hearing from people depth and breadth of the concerns that people have got. This is how you effectuate a change in these regulations.
Yeah, 100%. We really want to get high participation in the comment period. I mean, it should be hundreds, if not thousands of people, I suspect, across the state. One of the oddities, I would say here for anybody that's looking at the calendar is the first deadline is before the comment period ends.
Right.
Which is odd.
What's that?
I think that gives, personally, a little view of how much weight they're going to give to the comment period.
Exactly.
I'm afraid, but this is what we've been given for now. And I strongly still urge, I think a show of force during the comment period would be still a productive exercise. There's going to be another opportunity as well that I'll mention.
I'd like to think about us, if people feel comfortable, if we feel united about what we would want to say, I'd like to think about the board sending a letter
Yeah.
for the comment
Yes.
period. I don't know if people, I mean, you can individually do it, but I just think it might have a little more gravitas if it's the board saying, what we're struggling with on.
And I'm going to strongly encourage that for all the boards. So for those that don't know, again, I represent 5 towns, 4 of which have rejected it previously. So I'm going to encourage all the boards to do the same thing. So I think that's a good idea.
Yep.
But this is sort of where we stand right now with the comment period. So I wanted to jump in next is what is sort of the hallmark of what I focused most of my attention on during the bill filing period. I believe this is going to create positive conversations. These are what I filed for legislation in response to the governor's and the HLC's announcement of the emergency regulations and how they're going to do the process going forward. So basically, I presented 3 paths forward here. One is going to be exempting adjacent communities, which is not relevant to Hanson, but I do represent Marshfield and Duxbury as well that do not have any stations. The law was formed with transit in mind. They have no transit. I think an exemption makes a lot of sense there. The second one that you see here is the one that I think is going to have the best chance to cross the finish line, to be candid.
Definitely.
There's 2 parts to this. One is automatically putting compliance deadlines out to 2028. There's still ongoing litigation, as many people know, a class action lawsuit that I believe also now contains residents from Hanson. This is going to work its way out. I've been told that it's possible that Milton may have to re-enter litigation because they brought up 3 main points. The SJC really only addressed the first point and basically determined the other 2 were moot because of it, potentially starting their process all over again. So I suspect that there's other towns that may bring litigation as well. So I think pushing the guidelines out is the most common sense thing to do. Let the legal process play out and, hopefully let legislation play out and see if we can come to an understanding before wasting a lot of taxpayer money suing each other.
Well, I liked the second option, particularly because it pushes the date out, but it's also like, look, no, you don't get to, through the guidelines, add all, like the kitchen sink of
Right.
grants.
Yeah.
You explicitly need to, in the law, state what the grants are.
Exactly, and that's what part 2 is here. So we chose the language very carefully because in the regulations, it says the phrase, and I'm sure Chief O'Brien and the other chiefs can attest to, the letter that awarded them, a letter that should have had a happy tone, had a whole paragraph about the future of additional grant money, and it said very explicitly, all future discretionary funds will take compliance into consideration, which is incredibly alarming that they put it right out in plain language here, and set up all their future fights that for some reason they want to have.
Miss Green is going to get into this a little in her town administrator report, or she may not need to because you've stolen a lot of her thunder, but we got a similar letter basically with these new deadlines, but the very last paragraph was like, in all, grants, you're going to need to, any discretionary grant,
Exactly.
this will be taken into consideration. They fall short of saying you won't get it,
Right.
but you won't get it.
Right.
So
That's what that 1419 really does, is pull that back. There was in 2022, or really 21 when it passed, it was very explicit about what grants you lost access to. It was 4. They added on 13, and now they're adding on everything. So we're trying to reel it back in. The legislature is the body that is supposed to be doing appropriations and holding back all of this taxpayer funds, even though the applications go through the executive office, I don't think is right. And when it was voted on by the legislature, although I was not there, it was with an understanding that the law as written was what they were voting on, and it has completely taken on a life of its own and gotten completely out of hand. So.
I mean, because as it's structured now, first responder grants, educational grants could be on the table. Like, there's literally
no limit.
No,
Right.
No guardrails there.
Right.
I have to say, for someone who doesn't like to be pressured into doing anything, she certainly likes to exert pressure on us.
Yeah.
I can't argue with that.
Yeah. Yep. So as I mentioned, that is the one I am most realistically feel a lot of promise for. That one already has bipartisan support. Some of these were signed on as joint presentations with Republicans and Democrats on them.
Right.
I'd say the first two, 1420 and 1419, are already coming up on a dozen co-sponsors, both sides of the aisle. There's a big appetite. There was 23 total bills filed in relation to MBTA zoning by 11 different reps of both parties. So there is an appetite for this, and I'm cautiously optimistic that the conversations will be had. They will be had. All of these bills will get public hearings, and that will be the second mobilization, as I mentioned, with the comment period. That's going to be held all through the executive office, but the testimony and the public hearings themselves are all done at the legislature. So people that are voting on this and deciding whether these bills will go forward or not have to give you your time. And that
So can you keep us in the loop on when those
100%.
public hearings are going to be?
Yep. So that's going to likely, unfortunately, be a couple months down the line. I'm not sure if it'll even be before that July deadline, but I will absolutely be giving information to the public and the towns.
Okay,
for sure.
great.
And just to note for anybody who's not able to see the slide, the third bill that I proposed was a total repeal of MBTA Communities Act. I'm realistic about that one's proposition, but I think it's an important conversation to have. And like I said, it's going to get a public hearing.
Well, it's a Hail Mary, but you start from there and then.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So at this time, this is kind of everything that I wanted to cover. This is a handful of other legislation that I think is of interest to the town. Was there anything else, I guess, that you wanted to cover now on MBTA zoning or legislation or anything?
Where are
like
we
that?
at on the Chapter 70? What are you hearing? What are you doing?
As far as that being influenced by
Yeah.
compliance?
Yeah,
I have not heard anything additional about them touching Chapter 70.
okay.
Chapter 70, I have a little blurb in here as well. There seems to be some appetite for amending the formula as well in general, because I think Hanson's plight is not unique, unfortunately, in the Commonwealth right now, where schools are eating up a larger and larger portion. And, we can debate overrides and budgets all day long, but the point being is that Chapter 70 is just not pulling its weight the way it was designed to help towns.
Now, a couple of us, Ed and myself, went to the Mass Municipal Association conference this weekend, and one of the breakout sessions they had was why is public education, why are public education costs going up so high? And, I think it was stuff we knew, but to hear, that a lot, like the ESSER funds that people were given to help out with a lot of the COVID-related stuff went away, but those services never went away. So, you still have all of the emotional, social needs, and you can argue whether that needs to be done or not, but they're required to give those services. So if they're required to give them, somebody's got to pay for them. It's, we only have one pie, and if the state doesn't, it's an unfunded mandate, essentially. You're telling people what they've got to do, but you haven't given us a penny more to try to do those things. And then that ends up putting us in the position that we're in now, where we've got to even think about doing an override or drastically slashing, departments. So I would, anything that you could do to advocate for that increase in the Chapter 70 would be greatly appreciated.
Yep, absolutely. And I did file one bill. It doesn't, so one of the biggest problems that we saw as well during COVID, there's a part of the formula that actually caps the cost adjustment, or there's an inflationary cap on it. So when we saw 20, 21, 22, we saw 8, 9, 10% inflation. Mm-hmm. There's actually a 4.5% cap. So towns were basically eating the inflation themselves, and the state was getting to pass that on to our communities rather than eating it, when much, I would argue, a lot of that not to go down a rabbit hole, but I think the state could have done a better job to prevent some of that. So what we're doing here is, we didn't have the time to get the numbers. Unfortunately, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education could not provide us with numbers about what the influence on the Commonwealth would be to change the cap. So we just didn't feel comfortable filing legislation to change it without the numbers. We got to answer for that. So what the bill I proposed here, which I'm again cautiously optimistic, I think there should be some appetite for this as well, is to study and create a commission and basically force DESI to give us those numbers. So I'd like to see what uncapped or 5% or 8% or 10% or what that would do. Obviously, that's going to be something that helps, per se, all communities. It's not going to target by any sort of demographic or need or anything, but I think it would be a big help, and I don't really see why the town should be eating the inflation
Well,
instead of the
it was
state.
interesting because, again, at this conference, Lieutenant Governor got up and she spoke about the Student Opportunity Act, and she acknowledged that for towns like us, I mean, she didn't name Hanson, but she said, you know, it's been great for some of the bigger cities. The Student Opportunity Act has made the towns get more funding, but she said, we've recognized that now there's towns that are sort of in the middle of that sandwich, and we'd be one of them, and a lot of the surrounding towns are, who have been disadvantaged
Yep,
disproportionately by the change in the formula, and
Yep.
what we've got to come up with versus what the state's coming up with. So it was like, okay, well, that's great, but like, we're in it. What are we doing
Right.
about it right now?
Yep. And I mean, that's something that's going to be able to likely play out during the budget process as well. I'm not privy to every single, piece of possible amendment to the formula, but this is one where we thought it would make an immediate impact, and it just makes a lot of sense. I know there's other people talking about retroactively going back and looking at the inflation that occurred the last 5 years. Senator O'Connor, who is a counterpart of mine on the other side of district, has looked at an inflation bank where basically you hit up your 4.5%, and whatever year, it goes below the 4.5%, you'd basically make up for it. So there's a couple different solutions to at least that one piece of the puzzle. Again, I'm hoping for some numbers there that we can at least see if this is the right path forward for some amendments. So.
Did anybody have any questions for Representative Sweezy?
Yeah, who's the one town that didn't,
Yeah, Pembroke, actually,
they complied?
they complied. Yeah, so they were one of the first ones in the state, interestingly enough, to vote on it.
They knew what they were doing.
Yeah, they voted on it in spring of 2023.
Yeah.
So
It was definitely before, I think,
More information
some of the other, what are you saying?
More information came out. It was
Thank you,
before.
that was very diplomatic way of putting it, yes. Mr. DeFrayis, yes,
I just had a couple of questions for Representative Sweet.
sure.
So it's your understanding that as of right now, because of the emergency guidelines, we are in interim compliance?
correct,
Okay,
at least until February 13th.
okay. So we would have the ability to apply, let's say, for one-stop grants at this point prior to February 13th?
Yes.
Okay. And the last question would be, I know the legislation's got to work its way through. Should we be looking at meeting those deadlines, or is it up to the town to do what they, should we meet those deadlines, like the February 13th, to provide an action plan at least?
Yeah,
I mean, I know that's just an opinion.
of course.
I have to say, the townspeople overwhelmingly gave us a decision. They don't want to be in compliance. Starting that process up makes it look like we are going against the townspeople's desires and trying to bring Hanson into compliance. And I have to say, I'm one of the people I do not want to be compliant. I understand that we're losing grants. I get that. But we're being held hostage in order to do this, and they want to fundamentally change our towns. And I don't want Hanson to change the way they want it to change. Go look at Weymouth. Go up on Route 53 in Weymouth and take a look at what's going on up there. That's what they want to do down here. They want to do it all along the corridor.
Ms. Green?
I do have town council waiting in the shadows.
Yes, so after we finish with.
Yeah, so she may be able to address Mr. Drapeau's.
Right, and give us a legal recommendation.
Yes.
You're a bit in the hot seat on that one, but what I've anecdotally heard that most towns are doing is filing the action plan. Now, what we do with that afterwards, the bringing it back for the vote, et cetera, that's a different discussion for a different day. But the filing the action plan puts us in the same place that we were in before town meeting, the town meeting vote, which is that you're in interim compliance. That may give some versatility in terms of grants and things, just for a very brief period of time until that July, period of time, comes up. And then at that point, but we'll definitely have a discussion about that. And that's one of the reasons why I asked legal counsel to come is, see what the lay of the land is and, what they think the ramifications of the SJC, case is. But did anybody have any, yes, yeah.
I just want to say, Madam Chair, through you, Representative Sweezy, and also Representative Brady, it was a wild 36 hours. We also got hit with late on Wednesday night, and I sent emails to the chair and to Ms. Brina, thank you very much, because you started making phone calls right away before even I got hold of some of them.
Don't get me worked up,
I know.
Chief O'Brien. Poor Ken was like,
But Representative Sweezy and I were either emailing, texting, or on the phone. It was every couple of hours, right up until about 8 o'clock or 8:30 that Friday night. Just like you and I were on the phone, kept dropping and texting, but thank you very much for the support with it. It meant a lot.
it was good teamwork and it was very much appreciated, yeah.
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 Of course, and that's what I'm here for. And same thing to Tony's point, if you guys are doing one stop by, please have me be a part of the process. We can write letters, we can advocate, we can do anything. It's gonna be sort of uncharted territory for all of us, and this is something where, even reps that have been there, haven't had to go through this
No.
before. So, this is really, I see no disadvantage.
Well, how many,
Take that up.
Well, I appreciate that. The reason why I'm asking that question is because the one-stop grant program is going to be opening up very shortly.
Yep.
So it's a matter of, that it takes time to get those grants, so it's a matter of, okay.
Yeah, and I know.
If we can get in there.
Right, and I don't want to waste your time, of course, but I do think that it would be the proper thing to do to go through that process, because I suspect this is going to be a very fluid situation. I suspect that it's going to depend on the week. I do very much believe this is going to get much worse, to be honest with
Oh, yeah,
everybody.
yeah. Yeah.
But 1419, the second one that I mentioned, I actually filed as an emergency piece of legislation. Whether people care that I think it's an emergency or not is yet to be seen, to see if that gets taken up earlier than the rest. Who knows?
Well, we have, if I may, Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
We have 2 grants that we did get last year, one for $70,000 and one for $37,000. And the contract was not executed on the first because of the non-compliance.
Yep.
And I have not been, the state has not contacted me to execute the contract at all.
so we don't know, is the ball still in play now, or is it not, or is it,
So we basically
yeah.
have $300,000 in grants that are supposed to come to us that the contract has not been executed, and we've actually used those grants. So
Yeah, was there any date for, is there typically a date for execution on that?
it would have been January 1st. And so.
All right, well, we're in interim compliance today, so.
They
So-
had reached out to us and said, prior to January 1st, hey, congratulations, you got these 2
Right.
grants, and then we'll execute on January 1st, then because
Right,
of things
of
that
course.
are going on,
Yep.
they have not done so. So we have that outstanding money out there.
I'm wondering if you might be able to work with his
Yeah,
office.
we're gonna get on the
and-
phone tomorrow.
Yeah,
Great.
You and I.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Yep, okay, that's great, thanks, guys. Any other questions for Representative, oh, yes, please state your name and, yep.
Stacy Sabeck, High Street, excuse me. How are we doing with the legislative audit? Is that getting anywhere to state?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I believe what you're talking about is question 1, right? With the auditor being able to open the books on the legislature, something that I adamantly support as well and talked a lot about, as well as the whole Commonwealth voted at nearly 72% to pass it. As you can imagine, as I'm sure anyone has seen in the news, the legislature leadership has not been so forthcoming. I do believe from the last thing that I've seen, the last update I got is it's likely to go back to court. I believe that the auditor has sent a letter to the Attorney General to get involved. I've not seen a response from the AG up to this point. I believe she is busy suing the president. But I think that at some point, we're going to have to get a response from the AG, and I suspect it's going to go back to court, because they're not going to go down without a fight.
They don't like sunlight.
It's disappointed, that's.
It is,
like
it is.
sunlight.
Yep, absolutely.
Any,
Any more
okay.
specific things I can wrap up just with another minute, if that's all right?
sure,
Madam Chair?
yeah, yeah.
Just so everybody knows anything else that could be affected to Hanson, I also, and a couple of these, out of the 26, about 8 to 10 of them were actually bills that I refiled from former Rep. Cutler. Him and I were able to have a good conversation shortly after I was sworn in to sort of see if there was anything else that, since he was absent for that last year in the administration, that wasn't able to get across the finish line. There was a handful of things. One of them was this tax exemption for seniors, which is something that the board may not love to hear right now as we look at our current fiscal situation, but as someone who's worried about seniors staying in their homes, as I know everybody is, of course, potentially raising a local option that you could exempt the property tax for seniors up to $2,000. So that's something that will be on there as well. There was also a local bill that was there that actually did not get across the finish line at the end of last session. So we refiled that. That has to do with licensing, something that went through town meeting previously. Also wanted to note something that was put forward by the sheriff of Worcester and Plymouth counties to, there was a court case back in 2017 that made it illegal for local law enforcement to work with immigration and ICE and hold suspected criminals, illegal aliens, longer than what would be done for a local crime. So I submitted legislation so that the sheriffs could work with ICE and honor federal detainers, which I think will make our community safer. And since there was a town meeting vote, I wanted to make sure that I brought up that I also filed alongside, if anyone saw in the news, there was a lot of press over Senator Durant that was filing total repeal and sectional repeals of Chapter 135, known as the gun bill from last year, that had a couple different bill numbers. So I decided to file those bills in the House of Representatives as well, across 8 different bills that would repeal parts or all of Chapter 135. So I know that you guys ended up writing a letter, I believe. So wanted to make sure that I addressed that as well. And like I said, there's 26. We'll be putting a website up shortly that'll have everything listed out. If you go onto malegislature.gov right now and go to there's a page for every legislator, and you can see all the bills that are filed as well. So, and the only thing that I'll finish up with is just some contact info. I just posted it publicly. But, I have a legislative aide that started, so I have one staff member. He's great. He's had some experience in the building. He was an intern for 2 years across different offices, just got through with some military training and is a member of the Massachusetts Army National Guard. So he's great. He's been doing a really good job. So for anyone, if you're able to see this, and I can obviously pass it along, and I know the info is here in the office at Town Hall as well. But please feel free to reach out by email. Both mine and my aide's is there. We have a district phone number. So we are actually in a community office space still currently at the State House. So we will make sure that we update it once we get a permanent office, hopefully over the next month or so, which will come with an office phone number as well. And then I just posted, we just recently scheduled some in-district office hours, which we also highlighted, will include the Hanson Public Library on Friday, February 21st at noon. So please, if anybody's out there, if you have comments, questions, concerns, think I'm doing great, think I'm doing not so great, would love to hear from you. We track all the emails, we respond to everybody. And if you've liked anything you've heard, we'd be happy to help coordinate a visit of in-person testimony or written testimony for any of these bills. So please feel free to reach out. And I'm always available to anybody, whether it be the board or members of the public. So.
All right, well, we deeply appreciate you coming, and we appreciate your partnership and great information. So have your people call our people, and we'll keep it going.
Yeah, and I have some extra copies of the slides I'll just leave up here if anybody wants to grab for contact info or bill numbers or anything. So I'll leave this for you guys as well.
Yep.
It's a trivial question, but.
Yeah.
On that tax rebate or whatever it
The
is.
senior one?
Credit for senior.
Yeah.
Is that income dependent?
You'd have to ask Ken, he's the one who
Or
filed
is
it.
Anybody that's old?
Al, I'll get back to you individually. So once I check your ID,
Yeah, all right.
Ouch.
I can get an answer to you.
All right, okay. That seems like a lot of money.
It does.
It is, because,
If it's not income dependent.
Yeah.
A lot of old people do have some money.
yep, yep.
Some do, some don't.
Yeah. Thank you again, guys.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Next on the agenda is discuss SJC decision regarding Town of Milton MBTA community. We did hit quite a few of the points, thanks to Representative Sweezy. I don't know, Lisa, did we have, oh,
We
hi
do have
Liz, how are you?
Yes. I don't really know how to make her bigger on the screen.
I think she's
Big enough.
sufficiently big
Okay.
at this
Liz, can you
point.
hear us?
Um,
Oh, there we go.
oh, okay, that might have been over the top. All right.
Okay.
Myself.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
No problem. Sorry I couldn't be there in person tonight.
Not a problem. So we were hoping that you could, from a town council perspective, kind of, build upon what Representative Sweezy said, give us some, thoughts and analysis on what this means for the town of Hanson with the way that we're currently positioned.
Sure. I think he did cover a lot of what I wanted to go over, but one thing that wasn't addressed, because this is specific to the decision itself, is that the court did state that the statute is legal. And so likely any regulations that come out of the statute, as long as they fall within the parameters of the statute, will be deemed legal as well. The court also stated that the grant funding is not an exclusive nor sufficient remedy to achieve the mandatory goals of the statute. So they determined that the Attorney General has the authority to enforce the statute and can bring claims for injunctive relief. Now, the decision wasn't explicit about what those remedies would be, but it could include what was requested, which was to have someone appointed to write a zoning bylaw for the town, which would be worst case scenario, or to have the building inspector issue building permits for any multifamily project within a half mile of the transit station. And that would take the ability of the town to control where the housing should be and what that zoning should look like, and leave it up to a third party who doesn't have familiarity with the town itself. And so that would be the worst case scenario. If the town doesn't comply and then it does go to court and the court weighs in favor of the Attorney General's office, as they have already indicated that they would likely do, it's just a matter of what that injunctive relief would look like and what they could enforce. So those are things that haven't been decided by the court. They haven't said whether or not the regulations, the way they are written, are legal, because they didn't have to, because they weren't properly promulgated. But it is likely that they will be deemed legal. And so my advice would be to at least follow that first deadline for February and file an action plan. It's really just a simple form that you have to fill out. It doesn't involve a town meeting vote or anything like that. It's just simply submitting a form to the state.
Okay. Mr. DeFreeze, did you have any questions for Liz, or?
No.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Green?
I just want to clarify, on the action plan, it looks like it does require the town administrator to sign that action plan. So I would just need the authority from the board to sign that plan.
Right, but we're meeting before the deadline, right?
Yes,
Yes. Okay. Okay, and does anybody on the board have any questions for Liz?
I don't want to sound redundant, but
No.
what does the action plan actually have to say? Like, what? Very directly, like, what is it? Can I just write on a piece of paper, action plan, and submit it?
No.
Okay, so it has to be something substantial?
So I can actually, let me see, Lisa, can you let me screen share? Are you able to do that?
Let's see. Nope, hold on, that's.
Here, I'll send you a request.
Okay, there we go.
So, This is what the action plan looks like.
Oh, okay.
Can everyone see that?
Yep.
So it's on the MBTA website, and you choose your name, what type of community, you put in your capacity requirement. And there's really just a selection of, it's saying what applies to your community, and then list the MBTA rapid transit stations located within the boundaries. It's really just kind of a checklist that you go through. And then, once you do that, so the pertinent questions are, does the municipality have any established housing-related goals or strategies for municipal planning documents, housing production plan, master plan, economic development plan? To the best of your knowledge, which of the following zoning strategies is this community most likely to use for compliance? So it's really just concept-based questions. Do you have an idea of where you'd like this to be located? Do you have an area that meets the size requirements and is within the required distance to transit, things like that? And then it sets forth the timeline and when you're gonna meet those deadlines, and will you be able to comply is essentially the gist of that form, but it's not super long.
Is that similar to what you submitted the first time around for the action plan? Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yep.
I've begun looking at that action plan. One thing I brought up to Lisa is that there is a statement that is required to be signed by the town administrator on the town's letterhead. So I had started the action plan, and you can start, and it's, not completed, and then link up later.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I brought that to Lisa's attention, because that's one of the items that they want as part of the action plan.
Okay.
And it's the language, I found it interesting, the language they use in there.
Okay, did anybody?
answers my question.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Okay. All right, well, we really appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. Thank you so much. And I think between your update and Representative Sweezy's update, we're well armed with the State of the Union as it relates to the MBTA Communities Act. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a great night.
All right, you too.
Take care.
Okay. And that brings us to present candidate for building commissioner position, and I apologize that we,
Can I just ask one question about, so there was a deadline, so I know that you're probably planning on discussing this in the, do you have a time frame for discussing it or taking a vote if Lisa were to need signatures?
we'll discuss it at our February 11th meeting,
The February 11th, that'll
Yep.
be the meeting, it's due on the
the 13th.
13th.
Yep.
So people will be working on it before, in order to be able to comply if
Mhm.
we decide.
Mr. DeFrayis already indicated he has been working on it.
Is there a public process for looking at it or seeing the information, or it just seems really close to the deadline, that's why I'm asking.
I mean, we're not anticipating a public process for anybody looking at it. It's a action plan, which Mr. DeFrayis submitted before, just as she just pulled up, but there'd be no public input really on it. It's sort of fact-based, and Mr. DeFrayis would be the one who would have those facts. So I think the vote we'd be taking on the 11th would be to support Ms. Green submitting on behalf of the town the action plan.
Is there an opportunity to see it before the 11th meeting?
For the public to see it?
Yeah.
You could reach out to our office if it's available. Typically, I don't think the board would have had an opportunity to see it, so it may not be the final plan if we have changes, but if you want to reach out to our office, and if it's available and it's done, I don't think it would be a problem. Yeah.
Is there a way to print it out, like before it's submitted, or is it just, you fill it out online and then you hit submit, and you're not able to print it beforehand? Beforehand?
Yeah.
So you can start it, and then if you're not gonna finish it, you can go back to it, they send you a link, and then once you're finished, you know, they'll send you an email, and then you can also print it out.
Okay. I mean, we're not, the only reason I'm not taking a vote tonight is we don't have that on the agenda to take a vote on it. Otherwise I would, you know, but I think is everybody in general agreement that we should at least fill the action plan out? You know, this isn't addressing what we do for the next step, but is everybody in general agreement that we should be doing that? Is there anybody who's opposed to us doing it? Okay, okay.
I don't think I wish we weren't going there, but I don't.
Okay.
I don't like the whole thing.
I understood,
Sorry, I just-
but, you know,
I know, and I
and I
know we need
respect
the
what
money.
you're saying.
I get it. I
Yeah,
totally get it.
okay, all right. You
I
just-
totally get it.
All right, okay.
I'm talking out loud.
All right. I get it. I feel your pain. Okay, so, but we're really, but I think what I'm hearing is it will be, and Mr. Heel isn't here, but, you know, assuming that he's, you know, that he's copacetic with this, I think it would be just a sort of a pro forma kind of vote, just, you know, we've kind of told you now what our intention is, but we didn't post a vote for it, so, Mr. DeFreitas, if you can kind of operate under that, you know, that goal, that would be amazing. And then the vote will be, and of course, circulate it to everybody ahead of time. Ms. McDowell, you know, as soon as it's ready, circulate it with the materials. And to the extent if you would like it,
That's really not that
yeah.
conversation.
Okay. I'm sorry if,
Still very open-ended.
no, I'm sorry. In my mind, it seemed much clearer than it might have been, been for people sitting there, but, okay.
Can I just mention one thing? I just want to say, because our library grant is contingent upon the town, we've been informed it's being contingent upon the town filing an action plan, so that's why, and by February 13th deadline, so that's why the library's interested in learning.
Okay, understood. That's a new piece of information that we didn't have. So, yeah.
This might be totally out of order, but can I just publicly congratulate the library on receiving this grant? This comes every 5 years. We've spent years working on this, and I really want to acknowledge Karen Stouffer's leadership and Lisa's help in getting this grant. There's only a few given in the state. The fact that we were awarded this is like an amazing opportunity. Like, I don't think it's been celebrated enough that we.
It hasn't been celebrated because it was yanked before we could celebrate it.
And it's back.
Yes.
It's back and
It's back for now, and I have,
number one
yeah,
in the state
yeah.
have got this grant.
no, the work is amazing.
Yeah.
The likelihood of what happens next is questionable.
But we don't celebrate
Yeah.
good things enough, so
No.
I just want to.
No, you're right.
Acknowledge
No.
it and put it in, and thank
Yeah.
Karen for all of her work on this grant.
Point taken, definitely. And you know, and I think Lisa has worked. It's been a Herculean task for, not just for these guys, but, you know, the, public session, like, it's been like, climbing Mount Everest to get to the point at which you're at. And it is depressing, to me that we've done all this and now we find ourselves in the, crosshairs of a quasi-political situation that I don't know what the resolution's going to be. But yes, point well taken. Okay, and I thank you for hanging in. I assume you haven't gone from the building running, from the meeting running, and that speaks volumes of you, sir. I assume you are a candidate for building commissioner.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So do you mind, coming into, we call this our Inquisition seat. Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Teresa. So, Ms. Crean.
Yes, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the board, I present Michael Christofoli as our candidate for building commissioner. Mr. Christofoli comes to us with a number of years of experience as a local building inspector, zoning officer, building commissioner. He's been playing in this role since the early 90s. So he is well experienced in zoning and inspections and things like that. He does hold all his certifications, they're all up to date. He is currently working in a town that is quite a distance from where he lives, so his motivation is to get closer to home. You know, with all the competition out there, he has chosen, Hanson as his first choice, to come to work for us. I do have, some recommendations that were, presented to me from, past associates of Mr. Christofali, both basically stating that they have worked with this gentleman for quite a while, that his professionalism is well recognized, his experience and his knowledge in his work with the general public are, again, professional all along the way, and they would recommend him as our next building commissioner for the town.
Okay.
And I will present him for, you know, questioning from the board.
So, thank you for making it through the gauntlet and getting this far. It's amazing. Speaks volumes of your tenacity. Enforcement, isn't for the weak of, heart.
No, it is not.
Not everybody feels comfortable doing that. How do you feel sometimes being the harbinger of bad news, and enforce, you know, and having to work with people on things that, you know, might be expensive, maybe, you know, a decision that we make is gonna cause them to have to spend more money than they were anticipating, but it's what we need to do to be compliant. Are you comfortable in that kind of a?
I am, and I take a different approach. I try to give them alternatives on other ways to meet their goals, because there are a lot of ways to, you know, do things differently.
Definitely.
So I'm a firm believer of being a public servant, and I'm here to help them, not to hurt them. So in the interim, I might explain to them, okay, yes, it might cost you a little bit more money, but in the long run, you're gonna save money. Like the new energy codes that are out there,
Yep.
those are not for everybody either. Those are very, you know, you can't force somebody to live beyond their means. And I think that's why the DOE actually kind of scaled them back a little bit and put the 1,000 square feet, you know, of additions and things like that on there, because they realize that. The guy with the cabin in the woods, you can't make him, you know, do that, you know, just all of a sudden. You know, even just because he wants to redo his kitchen or his bathroom or something like that. So there are ways around it, and that's what I'm here to do, to help them get there, you know, within their means.
Okay, that's awesome. And how do you view that department in terms of revenue? You know, I'm not certainly saying it's a moneymaker, but I do think that, perhaps in the past, we haven't been as consistent about, charging fees as we ought to. And we are in a fiscal crisis, so every penny counts. And the way we pay for our plumbing inspector, electrical inspector, building inspector, in part, is through the fees that we charge. Is that something you've got a laser focus on?
I do, because in most of the communities that I've been into, that we've changed over to a computer system, they have actually taken like 180, meaning of revenue brought in, because it was made it easier to educate the public on how to apply and make it easier for them to apply. So that in turn brought more revenue in, say, quicker and easier for your applicants. And the whole key is public education.
Yes.
In other words, you have to do a little bit of hand-holding, because not everybody's computer savvy. But once they learn it, it can be very easy for them. And I'm not opposed to doing that. I implemented three of the towns that I've been in over the 30 years. I've implemented the computer systems from the beginning. And yeah, it did take a long time, a little bit, but everybody that came in, you made it available for them and you kind of walked them through it. And that's what you have to do. And once you do that, the contractors and the applicants seem to, I'm not saying run to it, but it makes it easier for them.
There's a learning curve there.
Yes,
I've had more than my sufficient amount of time cursing at Permitize. But Now, how would you describe, how you would work with other land use boards and with some of our first responders? Like how do you see, the interaction between all of those departments?
Okay, well, I know we're a one-stop shop here in Hanson, which is great because that way you have easier communication because you'll see them on a regular basis. But in most of the other communities that I went to, I'll give you an example. I used to go to our fire chief and lieutenant, say once a week and have I called it the fireside chat, so to speak. And I'd sit down with them and say, hey, what do you got coming your way? This is what I've got coming my way, and what can we do to help each other? And I do that with each, say, department head that's out there, just because that way everybody's on the same page.
Yep.
And that way it's just a nice working environment too. Say, hey, look, I can help you do this, you help me do that, that type of thing.
Do you feel comfortable in that role, taking a leadership role and saying, so for instance, we have an inspectional task, we call it an inspectional task force. I think that's the name. But anyways, it's, Board of Health, fire, building inspector, and whoever else we may need to get involved, but those are the core components, and they meet to talk about, what maybe some of the projects that may have some problems, may need a little bit more TLC and enforcement than others, a little bit more oversight, potentially litigation, and that type of thing. But one of the things that's been tossed around quite a bit, and I think would serve us well, both as town hall employees, but as to the public, would be sort of this idea of a land use board that meets whatever frequency, say it's once a month, to talk with the town planner and ZBA and conservation and the Board of Health and, and fire. Hey, what's happening? What's your priority? Anything I can help you with? Anything, here's where we're coming on that. We've asked them to do this. What are you guys asking them to do? Just so that, first of all, from a constituent perspective, they don't feel like they're getting kicked around town hall and getting, 15 different demands and nobody's talking to one another, but also so that we're not getting played, and that we're all on the same sheet of music, at town halls. That's something you've had any experience with?
I've had that in the town I work in now, right now. We have land use meetings, and where all the department heads come together. And we sit down and say, okay, what projects are on the docket that are coming your way? What have you heard about this property? What have you heard about that property? And we put them on an agenda, and then we discuss them, say, once a month. And that way, everybody is brought up to speed on what this person knows that they've heard, or what this person knows that they've heard is coming their way. So then everybody knows, okay, what's it gonna mean for you? What's it gonna mean for you? And then everybody kind of knows that. And then they can actually tell the, say, applicant that comes by, the same story, so to speak, across the board. So then there's I wouldn't say no questions, but at least it's on the same playing field, like you're saying.
You want them to consistently, be hearing the same thing. You don't want 15 different, it can be frustrating. That's awesome. I'm really glad to hear that you've done that. And then my last question would be, if you're driving around town and you're like, oh, hell no, I can't believe I just saw what I just saw. Like, what's your comfort level of pulling up and saying, excuse me, were you aware that you needed to pull a building permit for that? Is that something you feel comfortable doing?
Do it every day.
Okay.
And to tell you the truth, I'm more approachable than anybody that of my peers anyway. I would pull up and introduce myself, tell them who I am, why I'm here, and then say, okay, let's have a talk. And I'll explain to them, why I'm there. I happen to see it, and maybe it's a potential danger. Maybe it's, and then tell them why, because we're primarily public safety.
Yes.
Keeping the public safe from themselves as well.
Yep.
So, that's how I'd approach it. You don't want to, give them the gauntlet or, full barrels right away. You want to kind of like ease into it a little bit, tell them why you're there and how you can help them, And even if they didn't know they had to pull a permit, explain to them why. It's pretty simple. It would protect themselves from anything else.
Yeah, it's true, and I think a lot of times, I can't even tell you how many times I've heard people say things like, well, I'm a homeowner, I could do my own electrical work, which my husband's an electrician, so that puts him right over the edge. I can do my own, I don't have to pull a permit, I don't have to, and it's like, similarly, people just sometimes don't have, they don't think of it from a safety perspective. They're thinking, hey, I've watched a YouTube video. I can do this just like the next guy, And yeah, there are some things that you can probably, do a YouTube video and do it yourself. But there are things that you may not want to do. Well, that's all music to my ears. Did anybody have any questions?
No. The only thing I saw is, are you still gonna maintain your, association with the town of Ashland?
I don't work in Ashland right now. I work in town of Wayland. That was a prior.
It says, Hopkinton. Alternate building
I was the
inspector.
alternate for a while, but
Yeah.
that commissioner had retired, and I was backing him up at that time when I was in Ashland.
Okay, because it says to present, that's why.
Yeah.
You just.
Well, I told them I was still available if they
Oh, okay.
needed to call me,
Right,
if they,
right.
went down the line of other guys that are
That
in
happens
the
a
area.
lot.
Yeah.
I've figured out that there's sort of this like ebb and flow between, people backing each other.
Mhm.
Do you have any business of your own?
I do not.
Okay, all right. Any
No,
questions?
that's
Any
good.
questions? Okay, Ms. Green, I'm looking but do not see could you read us the suggested motion for this in terms of
Okay.
hiring date and,
I would ask for a motion to appoint Michael Christofoli to the position of Hanson Building Commissioner and zoning enforcement officer.
effective,
I will work with him on a start date. So, do you have a start date right now?
Yeah,
or-
right now, but I'd like to give the courtesy of the standard 2 weeks
of course. yeah.
notice.
Yeah, we won't want you doing less than that.
So I would
And
say,
contingent upon a background check.
Yes, yes,
And-
that we've already talked about.
Do we require a physical for this position? I'm not sure.
Yes.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
so we've already talked
All
about
right,
that.
so I will entertain that motion.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
okay, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? All right, thank you very much, and thank you for putting up with the Inquisition, and welcome on board. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And for the next meeting, I will have the employee start.
Thank you for your time.
New
Nice.
employee
Thank you.
status form for you to sign. So. I'm gonna
Okay,
excuse
great.
myself for one moment.
So these two are tabled.
Yes, yep. Okay, request, oh, you know what, I'm sorry, Richard, that we tortured you by,
Yeah.
but we're gonna move stuff around, Richard, we're gonna get you out of here. I'm gonna take a few little things out of order. Appoint Richard Jasmine to the Highway Building Committee.
So moved.
Okay, any further discussions, because I kind of think our highway director needs to be part of the highway building.
Yeah.
Great,
Yeah.
okay, all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. All right, so that's awesome.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Condolences.
Our condolences, Richard.
Exactly.
I meant congratulations, okay. And then, request town clerk, the request from town clerk, approve early voting hours for May 12th, 2025, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., May 13th, 2025, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., May 14th, 2025, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. I will entertain that
So
motion.
moved.
Second. She does have it written down.
Oh, she does.
Strictly though, I don't know if you
Who
want-
has that?
It's just in the packet.
All right, do you mind reading it then?
It's basically what you said, but.
Oh,
Yeah,
But
it said
it's
at the January 15th meeting of the Board of Registrars, a vote of 3-0 to recommend that the Select Board vote to hold in-person early voting for the annual Hanson Town election for 3 days of early voting at the Hanson Town Clerk's office.
okay, for May 17th.
Yeah, this vote is required in order to hold an in-person early voting for a
All
local
right,
election.
so that's the motion right now.
The motion's the third paragraph.
Yes,
I
that's,
make-
yeah,
Yep.
You want me to read that?
that would be lovely.
I make a motion to hold in-person early voting for the May 17th annual town election to be held at the Hanson Town Clerk's office for 3 days as follows. Monday, May 12th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., Tuesday, May 13th from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., and Wednesday, May 14th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Okay, amazing. Then that brings us to, the FY '26 budget presentation. Did we lose? Oh, no, you're here.
He's here.
Okay. All right, thank you for joining us, Mr. Kincher. It's always a pleasure. Even when you're telling us bad news, it's still a pleasure.
Oh, that's the town meeting.
Okay. So, Ms. Green, did you want to cue it up, or are we just gonna kick it right over to Mr. Kincher?
I'll just cue up that the board has, in front of them are the draft FY '26 budget projection. And with that being said, I'll cue up to Mr. Kincher to go over all the figures.
Okay, so, thank you for having me. This is like the, starting line for the budget process. It's January 28th. I think for first week in May is the end of the process. So, what we've done is, we've come out with a revenue projection, and, which was pretty easy to do. As far as tax revenue goes, with Proposition 2.5 and so forth, there'd be $1 million extra revenue this year. State aid, we have the governor's budget, we put that in, it looks like it's an $86,000 increase in state aid, which is a good thing. We have the local receipts going up 23,000. But in the past, we've used free cash and one-time sources of revenue to fund the budget. And if we don't use those sources this year, that's like $1 million swing going the other way. So, so the bottom line is, and then we used an article to fund some of the budget last year too. So if we take the one-time sources of revenue out of it, we basically have like 62,000 less to spend this year than last year. But I'd say, just call it, even where we're at. So, so the next step in the process was, basically all the departments submitted their budgets. The big one was the schools, which they haven't submitted it yet, but when I give you the bottom line number, it includes a 7% increase in the school assessment. That's what we put in as a placeholder, because we're trying to be realistic. We also put in, money set aside for contract negotiations, because we asked all the departments just to put in with no increase, and we set aside some money in the forecast, so when the contracts do settle, we'd have money available there, so that's included in the figure that I'm gonna give you. Also in this budget here, there's, money for the IT director, and there's money for a new position, IT assistant.
IT specialist.
IT specialist, and there's also money to fund a facilities manager. So, we talk with the different departments and so forth, and Lisa can speak to the importance of why she thinks those are like good investments for the town. And so that is kind of where we're at right now. Now, when we take the budget requests with those points, like the school assessment, the targeted investment, and having money for the contract settlements, and we have the revenue, it's like $2.6 million short. So that's where we're at right now, if we don't use any one-time sources of revenue. Now, I just wanted to let you know, just briefly, what the balances are of these different categories. I'm not saying they should be used to fund the budget, to just informational purposes, but we have like 2.4 million in unappropriated free cash right now. We have money in a sale of real estate account for 265,000. I think that, I was talking to Mr. Gillis about it. He said that was like earmarked for some project over there, but in any case, there's 265,000 in a sale of real estate account that you could use for capital projects. There's 25,000 in an opioid settlement account. That's money that we received from the drug companies, part of the lawsuit. That money set aside. Right now, we have 1.5 million in the town stabilization fund. We have 29,000 in the school stabilization fund. That was reduced because we used some of it last year to fund like the school articles.
Can you just remind me, for bond rating purposes, what's the recommendation for the stabilization?
Well, the combination of unappropriated free cash and stabilization fund should be like 10% of the budget, like 5 would be like the bare minimum. And our budget's like 36 million, so it should be like 3.6 million, which
So
would.
we're like, right, just
Right.
very
So,
close.
wow,
Okay.
that's amazing. We have 2.5 unappropriated
Yeah.
cash, 1.5, yeah. So that's
We're
kind
just
of,
about there.
we're kind of where we're at.
Okay.
Right now. So that's kind of where we stand right now. And so the finance committee, I think, is meeting tonight. We gave them like the figure, and they're probably gonna set up time to review all the budgets. And Lisa, I don't know if you wanted to talk, this year, we didn't do this, I didn't do this like last year as much as this year. One day that we came in, Lisa and I met with all the department heads, and we were saying, if we had to make cuts, we actually talked to all the department heads, and they're doing a write-up of, if you're at 10% of the budget, so if you had to take 10% of the $2 million, if you had to cut $200,000 in budget, how would that work out? And we did it to all the departments. So Lisa has some write-ups to go along with that, so we'll be prepared for, all different scenarios. So with that said, I could take any questions, but that's it. We started up. This is like the starting point.
Well, this is helpful. Does it include the additional staff that the fire department has requested?
No, it does not.
Okay.
Now, the way Chief O'Brien, which, physically responsible that he's thinking is that, he can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a grant that he's applying for, which would fund 4 firefighters full-time for 3 years.
Not MBTA compliant related?
No, this is federal.
Okay, all right, okay, yeah.
So-
You already applied for this once and we didn't get it, okay, all right.
So what the chief wanted to do, and I think it's a good idea, we did this in another town, is they did the override first, and that way, after 3 years, you'd have a revenue source to fund the firefighters after 3 years. So that
Which
was
you're
like,
required to do anyway with this grant, right? You have to make a representation that you're not gonna get rid of the jobs after the grant dries up.
Correct.
Yeah, okay,
so to answer the question, no, it does not include that.
okay.
And, yep, and then the other thing I see on the horizon is, a debt exclusion vote. It would be up to the select board.
Yeah.
But to exclude the debt payments for the South Shore Volk, because if they're not excluded from Prop 2.5, then we will in future years, I think the latest figures I had were like $900,000 a year to pay the debt.
Yep.
So,
And I think that starts hitting us in like 2029 or.
right.
In a material way. But that brings me to a question that, Mrs. Rain and I had discussed, and I had reached out to Ms. Green, but I don't know if I ever heard back. What is coming off of the rolls, for debt exclusions that we currently have?
Oh, that's so funny that you said that. Well, one is the high school, I think that's coming off, one more year with that, and I think the police station is coming off too. They're both coming off within
That's what I
the
thought.
within the next
That's
2
what I
years.
thought. I knew the police
Yeah.
station. but I-
Now, what about the IT, the thing, we borrowed for IT stuff at the middle school. When is that one expiring?
Oh, that's coming, that's probably like, we already paid off one, and that's gonna be coming probably within a couple of years. I was trying to work with John Stanbrook, but we're funding that through the assessment, the capital assessment. We're budgeting money to make principal pay down. So I'd say probably within 2 years, that would be paid off.
So we're looking at the essential, I don't think we have anything else that we had a debt exclusion on. So those 3 things that we still had that were outstanding for debt
Right.
exclusions
Yeah.
will be off the books within the next
Right.
couple of
And
years.
and if I'm not mistaken, I believe that the police station and the high school were debt exclusions.
They were.
So if they come off the books, the result is it's not gonna help us in our budget, it'll just help in the tax bills will naturally go down. As far as the high school debt goes, that's coming from the regular budget, those the short-term borrowings for the equipment. So when that comes off the books, that will actually help the budget a
Okay,
little bit.
but so I think that that's a little beacon of light in an
Yeah,
otherwise
absolutely.
very dismal update, which is that, you know, when we are looking at the debt exclusion for the South Shore of Oak Tech, since that's really not going to hit us for another couple of years, it will be hitting right about the same time that those other two things are coming off the books.
That's
And
right.
in a way, it will be, you know,
It'll be a softer landing.
Can I say, though, we need to budget and make plans based on that fact that we're not gonna be able to use that money elsewhere, we're gonna use it for tech.
yeah, so how do we do that? So with, I guess we just still do the debt exclusion, but as part of the information we provide to people, we would say,
Right.
these other two debt exclusions will be
So
done.
basically what we'd do is, as a public forum, we'll say like, this is your current, this is what you're paying for debt exclusion now, and this comes off here, and then the idea is with the high school, we're gonna try to blend it in, so it'll be like, if we didn't vote the debt exclusion for the high school, it would go like right down to zero. But then we're gonna, as this comes down, we're gonna start the high school, so it might be a little higher than what you're currently paying. We can graphically depict that.
That would be amazing, because I think people are thinking they're gonna get the whole hit, and I don't think that it's been universally recognized that there'll be some offset, because we've already been paying for debt exclusions.
And, I can graphically depict that in a chart, and then I could plug in the projected debt service and show the difference, like, yeah, because we did that in the town of Dennis before. What we did is, there was gonna be a drop off for 2 years, so we had this strategy where, instead of having a huge drop off, in the middle years, they voted capital exclusions would save money, so that the tax rate would basically stay the same, and that kind of reduced, there was some way to smooth out the,
Well, that's gonna be important for you guys for the highway building too, to know what we've got out there for debt exclusions.
That was an interesting discussion today.
Yeah.
I'm very hopeful with that one, because it's
Okay.
not anywhere near as bad as
yeah.
I thought it was gonna be.
No, we can do that, and then with those, we can actually project out like tax rate effects. You can definitely smooth out the way you're gonna do it, and a lot of it has to do with how you're gonna borrow the money. If you see a big gap, what you do as a treasurer, you'd say, all right, that big gap, let's pay a big $1 million in principal this year, because I know we have that gap, and then next year when the South Shore comes on, we're not gonna have it, so there's ways to strategize to smooth it.
Okay,
You know, we can definitely do that.
all right, so,
I have to say one thing, that I was very pleased to see that the town of Hanson was very strong.
very
Wanting
strong.
this school.
I mean, there was
I was
no,
very pleased to see that, very strong.
despite,
I know.
you know, despite the
Mini hammers.
vocal minority, Hanson came out real strong for it. And I was glad that it passed. I thought they did a very good job of educating people about what the value was for the South Shore of Oak Tech, and Superintendent Hickey and the entire South Shore of Oak Tech do an excellent job servicing this area, you know, for our needs and, you know, he's been very judicious about the way that money's been spent, and I think that's why people voted to support it. Did somebody have their hand up? Oh, Chief O'Brien.
I just wanted to give some clarification.
Yeah.
Why I'm asking for the override for the position. If we do get the SAFER grant, that's phenomenal. The federal government covers pretty much everything for us within reason, for 3 years.
Does that include benefits too?
It'll include, it's their payroll, benefits, outfitting with equipment and stuff like that. It does not, any overtime costs, it does not.
Yeah.
But the base pay, which is roughly about $340,000 a year.
Wow.
For 4 people. But if we do not get the federal grant, that's why I'm asking for the override in May, because we'll find out over the summer if we get the grant, and it takes a long time to onboard people. By the time we do physicals and things like that, if we don't get the grant, we'll use hopefully the override to then fund those.
And I know we'll get into this a little bit more at a different time. I would really like to have you come and really drill down for oil on this, but just to be clear, you're not saying that you're even going to be totally fully staffed for every emergency. Like, that's not what this is about. You're not overstaffing, and we're not saying that we're gonna never have to call mutual aid. Well, like, we're not getting crazy like that. This is reflective of the fact that the population has changed. We have a lot of over 55 people. You're getting a lot more calls of that nature, and even just the size of the population is increased. And, you know, you've got both ambulances out, out quite often. You're calling mutual aid, and you've done the metrics, and you feel very strongly that we need to have these additional positions.
Well publicized, because I gave the board light reading the last
Yeah.
time I saw you. So you could take time to absorb it, but today alone, we went 4 calls deep in a 30-minute period of time.
Wow.
And that is roughly now, 48% of the time, it's multiple calls going on. And there are many times, and I tell people after 5 o'clock at night on the weekends, there is no guarantee that somebody's actually in the fire station if both ambulances are out of town. And just the way healthcare is right now, we have some extended times at the hospitals waiting to put patients into a room or put them into a hospital bed. So, and we'll produce all the documentation.
Would you be able to talk to us possibly on the 11th about, to kind of go over, drill down a little bit on this? Okay, all right, that would be, so Ms. McDowell, can we plan on, we're just gonna dub that first response, exactly.
And that's part of the
Yeah.
reason why we're recognizing them,
Yeah.
because of some of the staffing issues that we're under.
Yep. All right, so if we can, since you'll be there anyway, and, that would be amazing. This is great information, Mr. Kincher. One of the things, I wish Mr. Heel was here because we were both at a couple of sessions together at that Massachusetts Municipal Association, and one of the things that they very strongly had suggested was for the school stuff, something has disconnected here with the communication between the town and the school. And I'm not pointing fingers, I'm just saying it's the way it is. There just is not a continuous communication. And there needs to be. We really need to be calibrating with one another and opening up that dialogue. One of the things that they had suggested was perhaps creating, and I really hate to use this word, but a subcommittee of a person from the school, a person from, from the town, you could, FinCom, so that there's some discussions happening. And then another thing that came up at our recent regional agreement committee was they were wondering whether perhaps a school committee member could be a member of our capital improvement committee. I actually thought that was a great idea. They already do it in Whitman. And again, it's sort of like that cross-pollination, it's one pot of money, and we've got to just determine priorities, and the best way to do that is to communicate with one another and have a better understanding of, okay, you've got that going on, your roof is leaking, okay, I can wait a year on this, but this is really important to us, and kind of, a little bit of horse trading, I guess, if you will. So, I'm glad that you got the information that you needed. Did you say you were still dealing with Mr. Stanbrook?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's yes, he's still there in a consulting capacity. I'm not sure who the school business manager is now. I'm not sure. I'm not going to speak for him, but my understanding is that they're in transition or they need a new, accounting type person or whatever.
Okay, all right.
But I saw him at Market Basket. That's where we had a little.
It's all going down at Market
I saw him at Market Basket.
Because you're both fiscally conservative, you're at Market Basket,
right.
getting all the good.
That's right.
Good, deals. Okay, did anybody have any questions for Mr. Kincher? Of course, as we drill down and, I'm sure we're asking the departments, if we go for an override and it doesn't pass, where can you cut? And I assume that we're, telling people how much we would need.
One thing that surprised me last year after town meeting was the large amount of free cash that bubbled to the surface. That seems to me to be a little.
Well, it happens every year. Maybe you can explain what happens.
So,
Yeah.
we're conservative in the revenue estimate, so there was a lot of free cash, but we actually combed through all the articles, so the articles that weren't being used, we closed them out. And as a matter of fact, there's gonna be an article at town meeting. I think I was a little overzealous on a couple of the planning board articles. So, they're gonna put it, they said, I looked at it and I said, they haven't spent the money in a year. It's just sitting there, and I closed it out. So then Tony's like, what happened to my article? So they're gonna put in an article at town meeting to take some of that free cash and replenish their articles. I guess they.
Because they are projects you're planning on doing, right,
Right.
Mr. DeFrayis? Okay, well, we do appreciate your
Yeah.
zealousness
Yeah.
on behalf
I
of
was
the
just
town.
surprised
Yeah.
at that number, but
Yeah, that's what happened. There was, I think, the school gave us, I wanna say, $400,000 in projects that we voted for that they said we could close out, like, John Sandbrook says, you have all these articles, you can close them, we're all set. So that was part of it too.
And then also, we get the estimates from the state, but then there's a truing up of what we actually get versus the early estimates.
Right. So the main thing is like closing out all those unused articles was like a lot of it, because we had these articles that have been sitting there for a long time. And
That was one time, we're not.
oh, yeah, no.
Yeah, we're not gonna be
We
pulling.
only
that
can
rabbit
pull
out
that,
of
no,
the hat. Yeah.
that's gonna have this,
Yeah.
no, yeah, we can't do that. That's only, you go to the well so often. Like I said, I apologize for being a little overzealous with that, and I was like, I'm dating myself, but I pulled the Alexander Haig moment. I don't know if you remember, like I'm in charge. So I was like, look, I said, I read the bylaw. I said, oh, the town accountant, but it's supposed to be the town accountant in conjunction with the department head decides to close it. So it's like, I'm closing this thing. So,
You just kind of let it trail off at times. It's a good thing Mr. DeFrayis has got a good sense of humor. And it did take a little bit of acts of diplomacy with the planning
I heard.
board to smooth that over.
heard.
Mr. Crenshaw shook out the sofa in the planning department very well.
Yeah, he was digging for the pennies. Any questions for Mr. Kincher? Yes.
I just want to add that, Mr. Kinship and myself had a great, meeting today with, the John Guilfoyle firm that is going to be helping us with the, information in the facts website. Eric was very impressed with the team that is, assembled for us. And we're going to work together to get them everything they need. And I think it's really going to be, a very, very good website, which will be ours, at the end of this.
Okay,
So,
great.
yeah, and the idea about it, like when I first saw it, I was like 9,000 to do a website. I'm like, but when I saw we met with like 6 people from the team, it's like a little bit more in depth, and it won't be just. We can use it for a budget website every year, whether there's an override or not.
Yes.
It's just gonna be another point of information.
that was what I thought we
Yes.
did.
Yeah, it's just a budget, every year, that's gonna be part of the process, uploading our documents to this place.
Which I really like that idea because, like, to circle back to the South Shore Voc Tech, one of the things that I really dug was that they had that separate little microsite. I didn't have to go digging through the classes offered at South Shore Voc Tech or anything about the brass lantern or, any of the stuff there. I just want to know about the budget. It's the project, it's all right there, easily understood, very intuitive. The tabs were, anything you wanted to know, it was right there at your fingertips.
So
So,
I think it's gonna be good. So it's set up to be like a recurring thing. Then you could have nice videos like of the fire chief explaining his budget.
I'm sure everybody's going to sign up for that. I think that will make Mr. Heel feel a lot better, because there seemed to be a notion that it was going to go away and it wasn't going to be sustainable. So I think everybody will be glad to hear that it is. Okay, well, that was a great update. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to 2025 May Annual Special Town Meeting. Have we already got a list of things that we're queuing up, or
for the select board or for?
just in general?
So we
Thanks,
actually.
guys.
We actually will be submitting, we will be generating the articles for the planning board. We did find the articles.
The ones we have to reinstate?
The ones that we're gonna
Okay.
reinstate, so, we will do that on behalf of the planning board, to present to town meeting, so we will put all those together.
I think this will be a lesson that you guys will never forget.
And it won't happen again.
I am sure it will not.
That's the best thing. We learn, and we move forward. We are going to put some, articles in, and actually I'm working with our, facility, maintenance technician, putting some articles together for some capital, which is going to include the parking lot, some improvements to the parking lot.
How about the flagpole?
We will work on the flagpole.
Okay.
So I'm working with him, to learn how to put these articles together to generate, so mainly in that area. And we're gonna be collecting, we've already got the warrant started, and we're gonna be collecting the, articles from the different departments and getting them in,
And
so.
what's the deadline?
Next week.
It's next week, okay. Do you know if, Conservation has submitted anything for the sleeper property parking lot?
I don't know if it's Sleeper, they have submitted. Let me just look.
Because I know the sleeper property, which we acquired with community preservation funds, I think Conservation wanted to start working on a small parking lot, that, you know, on one end of it, they've got the Smitty's Bog, parking lot, but on the other end, there is no public parking lot. You kind of have to, it's a little dicey. You've got to park like on.
I haven't seen anything.
No, I haven't, they submitted, but where is my thing?
All right, just wanted to make sure that didn't fall through.
I don't remember that.
Do you mind reaching out to Lon and just asking about that? Because somebody had asked me about it. Okay, and did any of you guys have anything? If so, we can just, you know, funnel it through Lisa and then we'll just talk about it and unpack it, you know, as we go along. And, okay, so since your deadline's next week and you don't really have that much, you're gonna send a little reminder to everybody?
I'm gonna do that.
Okay.
Beginning of the week.
I think people are just coming out of their holiday coma.
Reports, I didn't wanna get them mixed up.
Oh, yes.
Maybe I misunderstood you, Lisa. Are you doing the articles for the capital improvement committee?
No,
Is that what you mean?
No.
No.
We haven't met.
No, she's doing the planning board
the
articles.
planning, and then, like I said, I'm just working with mentoring somebody on, you know, generating an article for some parking lot.
Okay, but since you've brought that up, what is gonna happen with our capital improvement? Are we meeting or are we,
I don't
What's
know.
happening?
I mean, our chair was Frank, I think he
Yep.
resigned.
he did resign, yep.
So I'm not even sure, do we have enough members for a quorum?
Well, you've got Ed. How many members are it? 5 on that?
I think,
Kurt hasn't been showing up.
yeah, Kurt hasn't been there. It's been you,
So it's basically you, Ed, and Joe.
I think effectively, yeah.
Okay.
Because generally a letter or email goes out to, Frank contacts all the departments to find out what they want. So,
Right. People have been asking us, but I don't have any direction to give them.
Okay, but we're,
know,
in
I
the
don't-
absence of us having a functioning capital improvement committee, our office is going to, we have to have a capital improvement matrix, like, so we need to coordinate that because that's a critical part of the budget. So if we have nobody on capital improvement, then we're gonna have to take that task on. It sounds like we've got some members, but they may need more support from us than they have in the past, since I think Frank was kind of driving the bus and he's not there anymore. So I don't know if we want to reach out to Frank and just talk to him about what his process was.
Do you want to take it over?
I can't, I have to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm in the
she's just-
same boat.
yeah.
I think Ed's in the same boat.
Ed's
so-
definitely in the same boat. I mean, he's ZBA, conservation, capital improvement, I mean, for Pete's sake,
Yeah,
like,
and I was only sticking on just to make sure we had a quorum.
Yeah.
So I think that was because we shifted from having regular members and, alternate members. So, I mean, we did it just to keep a quorum going.
so,
But
yeah,
yeah,
so
I agree.
we've got a mission critical here on this one.
Yeah, I think and I think, you know, the average citizens need to know that town meeting, can't move forward without a capital
No.
improvement committee meeting, allocating the 1% that they're supposed to have budgetarily
Yep.
for capital projects. And, anything over $35,000 with a 5-year life expectancy has to be run through the capital improvement committee, even if it's gonna go on, the town warrant.
Yep,
So it's the capital improvement is incredibly critical.
So if you're out there and you don't like the way the town's spending the money, or you think our buildings need to be shaped up, then we've got openings. We'd love to hear from you. Apply on the employment opportunities under the volunteer tab, fill that out, ship it off, and we'll work on it.
I would also just one last plug that I think the capital improvement committee is a really low effort, high reward
Yes.
committee. So if you don't have a lot of time, but you want to commit to maybe like 4 or 5 meetings a year, typically around May, leading into May town meeting or leading into October, that's the only time when you really meet, and you get to meet all of the different department heads, all the different players, you have a voice, and you get to make recommendations for the town and where you think the dollar should go. I just think it's a low effort, high reward committee if you really are involved, but you don't have a lot of time.
Okay, I think that was an amazing pitch. Maybe we can circle back, Lisa, and think about how we skin this cat. Because we've got a need, but we may not have the people to help. Okay, and I thank you guys for hanging in there, despite all of the other things that you've got going on.
Last thing, really
Yeah.
quick, I'm sorry. If we do have interested people, remind me who appoints them?
We do.
We do, right?
Yep.
So they would just
Yep.
come to us, wouldn't
Yep,
they?
yeah.
So anybody that's interested, just get us on the agenda, we
Yeah.
can just vet them right
Yep,
away.
yep,
Yeah.
yep, just fill out the app and we'll check you for a pulse and probably gonna be appointed. Okay, anything else on town meeting?
No, that's fine.
Okay, awesome. Then we've got a,
Hanson Little League.
I'm sorry?
Hanson Little League.
Yep, Hanson Little League. I will entertain a motion to allow Hanson Little League to use the Town Hall Green for Saturday, April 12th, from 8 AM to 2 PM.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, amazing. We already appointed Richard Jasmine. That brings us to High Street Park Committee discussion. If you will recall and go in the Wayback Machine, we had a discussion when we had reappointments in the June timeframe, in which it was our aspiration to perhaps have another committee created that would oversee the various recreational properties that we had. That actually never came to fruition because nobody actually applied for that committee. At the time, our thought process was, well, we don't want to reappoint the High Street Park Committee people for the full term because we won't need them because this amazing committee will take place and they will take their responsibilities. But that did not happen, so now we need to reappoint the High Street Park Committee because they've actually been doing a lot of work and they've got a meeting next week and they actually need to exist in order to vote. Did we have a list of people for the High Street Park Committee? I know Joe Weeks, Don Ellis, Don is probably actually a planning.
David Mansfield, Robin Sparta, Curran.
Oh, all right, sorry, I didn't
right
even see
here.
that, okay.
It's all right
All right,
there.
so I will entertain, and all of these people are still,
I mean, there was somebody on the Conservation Commission.
yeah, so
I think he's waiting for an
Don,
appointment.
Howard, Dave Mansfield is probably from Conservation.
That sounds right, yeah.
Yep. So I will entertain a motion to appoint Joseph Weeks, David Mansfield, Robin Sparta Curran, Kathy Gerhart, Donald Howard, and Donald Ellis to the High Street Park Committee for a term ending, I guess we might as well say July 1st of 2025.
So moved. July 31.
6 months?
July.
June 31.
So, yeah, we usually do a
July
year
1st, she said,
appointment.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah,
that's fine.
it's just we're off
Oh,
the
we're
mark
half
this
a
week.
year, right? Okay.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. So hopefully that will get you guys where you need to go. That brings us to discuss right of first refusal for 50 Home Street. Miss Green,
Well, this was a situation that,
thank you.
basically came to our office today. The owner of 50 Home Street, is selling the property. Initially, when the property was purchased, it basically was one very long, large parcel. The owner had met with the planning board, of which the planning board approved a 4A, which divided the property in half, basically. Within the second lot where the residence is located, some part of that residence was, in chapter 61B, which is part of the forest agricultural or horticultural, recreation land, tax lien. What the owner did was he actually took a 0.492 of an acre and added it to the, I guess, the property area that's located around the dwelling that's on the first lot, if that makes any sense. I just learned about this today, so I'm trying to explain it the best I can. So basically, because it was in chapter 61B, which is again the forest, agricultural, or horticultural recreational land, the owner was supposed to come to the board so the board could exercise a right of first refusal.
Because in lieu, so that's in, consideration of the fact that they've been taxed as an agricultural or,
Yes.
forestry. I don't remember which 61B is, whether it's both. So, Mr. JeFreitas, did you have any thoughts on this?
No, the gentleman, that Form A plan came before the planning board, and they subdivided the lot into, it was one lot, they subdivided it into two lots, one being a 65,000 square foot lot of the existing dwelling, and then the remaining land. Our understanding at the planning board was that the house, that the intention was that the owner was going to sell that property on and then hold on to the back portion of the property, if you will, or possibly a future dwelling.
Okay.
So the planning board, as far as the planning board is concerned, as far as Form A requirements, whether it's in chapter land or not in chapter land, that's not under the purview of the planning board.
Okay, but now he's selling off the piece of property that you thought he was gonna hold on to?
No, my understanding, he's selling off the dwelling.
Oh, okay, all right, okay, but he's tacking some of the property from,
Right, a 0.492 of an acre, which is a very small piece.
Just under half an acre.
Yeah. He has already paid the tax on it. The assessor has already released it. From the, I don't know if it's the 61B. And basically there is a closing scheduled on this. I understood the closing was either supposed to be yesterday or today, but they have postponed it till Friday, with the hopes that the board could exercise this right of first refusal. And if it chooses not to, then we just move along and the owner moves along with the transaction.
okay, I mean, I do wanna just go on the record as saying that giving it to us the day that we're meeting is not acceptable, and going forward, this board will not be making a decision with the gun to our head without sufficient time to review it. That being.
Can I just interject here? Was this an oversight in the Form A? And the reason I'm asking this is because it happened to me. And it wasn't anything that I knew anything about, that the property that I owned with my ex-husband was given over to me in the divorce, but not that little piece that I Form A'd onto my property. I had to jump through hoops to get his name off of it. That's what I was wondering.
No, this guy
No,
came
because
before
it was a
Yeah.
surprise to me.
It wasn't
I was in
a-
the middle of getting
no.
a mortgage.
It's my understanding that the homeowner knew that he was in chapter.
Oh,
So this is
Yeah.
just a case of, when it's in chapter, there's a process when you're going to sell.
right,
off.
no, I know that, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
as far as the planning board, this was just presented to us as a Form A. Their representative presented, it's a Form A.
Yeah.
He's cutting off a 65,000 square foot piece that goes with the house. The intention that he was gonna be selling the house, he was gonna be keeping the back land. There's the specific requirements when it comes to Form A. And one, the planning board was never informed that it was in chapter land. And two, even if they had been, that's not a requirement on whether or not the gentleman receives approval or.
It doesn't play into
Right,
what
right,
you're doing, yeah. So, is there a specific motion we should be making?
A motion to not exercise a right of first refusal for 50 Home Street for a 0.492 acre of land that is located, it's identified as Assessor's Parcel Identification Map 66, Lot 1.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
That brings us to one-day liquor licenses. We've got one for 1/31/25, from 1 to 6 PM, and 4/13/25 from 11 to 5 PM. I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, great.
I wonder if I'm related to her. Herman spelt that way is not that common, and that's
Really?
my great-grandmother's, on my mother's side.
Wouldn't
yeah.
that be a
be
strange
very
little
weird.
coincidence? Yeah. Yeah, I've never seen it with the two Rs.
2 Rs and 2
Yeah.
Ns.
I will entertain a motion to approve the January 14th, 2025 open session minutes.
So moved.
I'm abstaining because I wasn't there.
Okay.
You have to second.
David, can we look to you? Okay, great. All in favor?
All right.
Okay, amazing. That brings us to committee updates. What can I say? I'm wildly excited about our Hanson Business Summit. I thank Kimberly Cunningham and Anthony DeFrayis for all of their excellent work on setting that up. We have Ernie Foster from Webster Printing who's going to be speaking. We've got Rep. Ken Sweezy and a host of other dignitaries. We've already gotten some RSVPs at the office, and we really have just started kind of advertising. But please let anybody you know that is an aspiring business owner or a current business owner, or heck, even somebody who's just interested in economic development, would love to see them at this event. He was invited. Yeah, as was Brady. Mr. DeFrayis reached out to everybody's office. Yep. I don't think we've heard back from him, though. And then that brings us to High Street Park Committee, which just got reconstituted and revitalized.
We were gonna have a meeting last week, and that's when it came to our attention.
Okay.
We weren't members, so
All right.
I'll have more for you next time.
Well, so your update is you've been resuscitated.
I appreciate.
Yep.
I appreciate the appointment.
Okay. And Highway Committee,
We had a nice meeting today. I was very happy with the plans, on site. It's a 20 to 30-year Band-Aid, but it's a pretty good Band-Aid.
okay, cool. That's
And they're
great.
gonna continue the, feasibility study.
When are we gonna get to hear more about it? This is like a little cliffhanger, a little teaser.
Mr. DeFrayis, when are we gonna be able to hear more about it? After the next meeting?
Yeah, in the coming weeks.
Yeah.
The whole idea is to try, one, to save the town money
Yeah.
by sort of doing some of this feasibility work, study, if you will, in-house, and present a report and some thoughts and some ideas for that.
Okay, well, that's exciting. We haven't had an actual update on the Highway Committee
There's one
for
coming,
years, so this
One
is
coming.
just, my heart's
and I think people are gonna be
palpitating.
happy with it.
Okay, well, that's exciting. Whitman-Hanson Regional School Agreement Committee, I kind of gave you guys an update. They're looking for a representative to capital improvement. Where do you guys kind of stand on that? I thought, we need capital improvement. I very much would like to hear what the school wanted. Thank you, Mr. DeFrayis.
Take care.
We don't need to take a vote, but I do want to get back to them the next meeting. You guys okay with that, or?
I don't know. I mean, there's no, it stinks to say this. We haven't, since, Frank came off, we haven't reorganized or anything.
Okay,
So,
all right.
no one to speak for.
Okay. But, no, I mean, as a board, are you guys, because we appoint, are you all right with that, or?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, okay.
Oh, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's totally fine.
All right, then that brings us to the town administrator report. Ms. Green, we've stolen quite a bit of your thunder here, in various capacities, but,
Well, we already talked about override.
yep,
So I'd just like, first and foremost, I'd like to recognize the highway department, who worked tirelessly to clear the streets and roads, for our first real accumulating snowstorm. you know, they did an excellent job as always. And I want to recognize our new highway director and, the leadership that he's put forth to make sure that everybody was ready to go. We haven't really had a snowstorm like this for a little while, so, kudos to them for the good work. So as human resources, there's been a number of personnel matters that have required attention, the past week, and I cannot discuss in open session, but they have taken up a lot of time, to deal with. Still working on them. The part-time administrative assistant position has been reposted. Unfortunately, we did have 2 candidates I was hoping to bring forward. One did, withdraw, so we've delayed that, and I've reposted it, on that. So I hope to be able to, bring someone back to the board, maybe February 11th or the next meeting. The Veterans Service Officer, again, I had a candidate to present to the board tonight. He withdrew, noting personal and health reasons. It's been reposted. It's gonna go back on the, in the Express. It's back on Indeed. So hopefully again, we'll have, the candidates to bring forward. It's been a painful process. We're just not getting the people.
You know, remember I told you that I was getting that mass alert newsletter? And there are veterans agents posting in their need for that. So I think this is something that's happening all over.
Well, you know, we're in competition. I mean, Whitman is looking for a veterans agent.
I noticed that,
So,
yep.
you know, we're in competition with many towns looking for the same position. So we're just gonna keep trudging forward until, you know, we have some quality candidates to bring forward to the board. And I just want to say too, that, recently, the amount of work that demands that are coming into the select board's office and town administrative office are almost to a level of being unsustainable. There's only 2 of us in the office and people expect me to be in 5 places at once and I can't. So I have been turning away people saying, I can't address this right now. Procurement is at the bottom of the list, unfortunately, because of the amount of work that's involved. You know, it take reading, writing, being able to concentrate, and I'm just not getting that, with the amount of work. We have negotiations that take up almost full days. And again, the work is just really becoming unsustainable and exhausting. I know that's what you bring me in for.
Ms. Green, I think this is probably something we want to take offline.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that, unfortunately, that's my town administrator report for today.
Okay. Okay. Now, I don't want to do this again because we did it before, but we've got wage and personnel meeting. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn our open session and to enter our wage and personnel board agenda.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. George, who hates being called Mr. George, but I don't know what else to say.
What we do? Call the vote. Do I have to make a motion to, open the meeting?
Yes, motion, and then you stand for pledge of allegiance.
No.
Already pledged.
We already did. We've blown that by before.
We don't need to do that again? Okay.
I'm not
Took that
pledging.
out when this was the chair. We open it through the open session.
I'll make a motion to open the, wage and personnel board agenda.
Second.
Oh, well, you can't make the motion.
Oh.
You're
So
entertaining,
moved.
you're entertaining a motion, and I'll
So
second it. Okay, go ahead. There.
I just said, I'm entertaining.
Yeah,
And
okay.
I moved it,
Okay.
she seconded it. so
All in
we're
favor?
aye.
Okay, great. We're on the same sheet of
All
music.
right.
Yes, we are.
All right.
New business, review the wage and personnel bylaw classifications.
This right here, looks like there's only a couple of changes.
So, so the changes on this, it's in bold and italicized. So you'll see that right now, most of the changes are, centering around the building department. So building commissioner, enforcement officer, the salary changes are, basically we had 75 to 80. We are not even anywhere close to being competitive with the other towns, so the increase in the salary is 90 to 100. Most towns are paying over 100 right now with advertising, so we are very fortunate.
Is that why we're having a problem finding a veterans agent, or do you think it's the money?
I don't know on the veterans agent.
Really?
Because it's a part-time position, so I'm not sure yet. But you'll see, you know, local building inspector, part-time position, 35 to 45, and then we went 45 to 55. Then you'll see we have gas inspector, plumbing inspector, wiring inspector. Again, $22 to $30 for all of those three positions. We've increased to $35 to $45. And that's basically, that's per inspection. Because we need to get people who are qualified to do these inspections. And again, we have a lack of staff.
And even that, quite honestly, these guys are getting $150, $200 an hour in the private sector.
Right.
Yes.
So like to
exactly.
pay them $45 an hour, like, you know, yeah.
Right. So basically, you know, those are only the real changes that we have for right now.
Commissioner per review, down the bottom there, FF, at the bottom of part-time positions. Why is the building commissioner down there, and then we've got it up?
Well, you know, I'm not sure why that's in there. It's been something that's in there. We can definitely vote to remove it.
Well, let's be careful
But,
because
yeah, so-
that may be a case where,
Is that if we use somebody?
that's what I was gonna say, if we have a backup
If
that
we
we're
had someone
using,
that
or,
came in,
yeah.
that's what he'd
Yeah.
be paid, or
Yeah.
they would be
That's
paid.
right, okay, so, yeah, so if we
Okay.
need a building commissioner to
That
come in
makes sense,
and
yeah.
maybe do inspections, sign occupancy permits, we would have what the hourly rate would be for
Yeah.
that. Or, I'm sorry, per review. That's right, I'm sorry, that jogged the memory.
Everything else is staying the same.
Everything else, basically, right now, there's no other, changes to any of the other positions.
You just need a vote to approve it?
Yes.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
All right,
All right.
we're gonna approve the minutes.
All right, approved minutes, the meeting minutes for August 20th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
I,
Make a motion to adjourn
So moved.
second,
Yes, but,
and go into executive session.
right. So all in favor, and then
I,
we're adjourning to executive session,
Right.
but we will not be returning to open session pursuant to open meeting law, chapter 38, section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. Litigation, discussions, union negotiations, and executive session pursuant to open meeting law, chapter 38, section 21A7, to review and approve executive session minutes not to be released, January 14th, 2025. I will entertain that motion.
so moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Aye.
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 Okay, we will not be returning to open session.